Florida State Seminoles, talk about them, I have to first of all have a follow-up on my most previous video, which was last Saturday night, the post-game show, in which I talked about Oklahoma's game against the Utah State Aggies. Now, for those who don't know, probably a lot of you don't, I record my post-game shows usually right after the game is over. I'm able to retain a lot of memory by doing that. At the same time, you get my emotional side, whether it's positive or negative. If you wait too long to do these post-games, in other words, if you wait till the next day, which sometimes I've had to do due to other obligations, sometimes the emotional part you don't get the same feel for. So I try to record them originally right after the game is over. It's just better that way. If you saw my Utah State video after the game, I'm sure a lot of you did because it got quite a few hits, and I thank everybody who watched, even if you didn't agree with me, and I definitely thank all of you who've watched for the first time. Hopefully you'll be back to watch more videos. You got a sense of how upset I was. If you were an Oklahoma fan and you witnessed that game in any form, either listening to the radio, you were at the game, or you watched it on pay-per-view, you're an Oklahoma fan, you cannot be happy with what you saw from Landry Jones, and especially from the Oklahoma secondary, who at times were slipping on the field, and at times not covering anybody, and when they were covering people, they didn't know where the ball was at. This is not a high-octane offense by any form in Utah State. Are they a better team than last year? It certainly seems that way. DeAndre Burrell, a better quarterback than what Oklahoma thought, seemed that way. Was he pretty mobile? Yes, it seemed that way. But you're telling me that Oklahoma was only 7 points better than Utah State. If that was the case, then why wasn't the spread of the ball game 7? They were a 34-point favorite. You look on Oklahoma's schedule, this was one of the easiest, if not perhaps the easiest game they were supposed to have. In the fourth quarter, there was a lot of doubt. So, you're an Oklahoma fan, you should have not been very happy with that performance. Only winning the game by 7 points. And I got angry because, look, you've watched my videos, a lot of you throughout the months, okay, since last year. And you know that I'm pretty fair when it comes to Oklahoma. They do well, I praise them, okay? You guys know that. If they don't do well, especially against a team that they're much better than, and they keep making the same mistakes, you bet I'm going to say something, and I'm not going to be happy. I'm not going to come on here and say, final score, Oklahoma 31, Utah State 24. Oklahoma didn't play well. Good night, everybody. That's a pretty boring report, and that, by the way, is not me. You know, I'm going to say what's on my mind, okay? I'm going to tell you what I think is the truth. Anything other than that, and what's the point of doing these videos? Okay? And I have to say this, okay? If anybody wants to be critical of me, you're more than welcome to. Constructive criticism, hey, lets me know what I'm doing. It doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to change my approach, but I will listen and usually I'll respond. But I did have one person who says, you know what, this is going to be the last video I ever watch. You're the reason why people hate OU fans. Really? And he also said I was a spoiled little, and then the word that rhymes with switch. Yeah, the guy was not very happy with me, this person that put a message on my board and basically said he's never going to watch again. Well, first of all, 2 words to that. Boo-hoo, okay? Several people don't like my videos, okay? That doesn't bother me, all right? Secondly, look at me. I'm not little. I mean, come on. Last time I checked on the scale, it definitely showed I wasn't little. Okay? You want to be critical of me, that's fine, okay? But back it up. The name-calling stuff, save it for somebody else, okay? And like I said, I'm going to say what's on my mind. When I said that I had doubts about the Bob Stoops, you know, about Bob Stoops, what I said, now, that guy, I think, took it for me saying, I want him fired. Never said that, never intended for it to come across that way. I'm just saying that after watching the way Oklahoma played Utah State, the Oklahoma Sooners definitely have some improving to do. And if they don't, then Florida State's going to beat them. Other teams are going to beat them. And at that point, if you're an Oklahoma Sooner fan, wouldn't you have doubts about the future? That's what I meant, okay? Don't want Bob Stoops gone. He's one of the best things that's happened to Oklahoma football. Responsible for turning the Oklahoma program around from the dead in the late 90s. 6 Big 12 championships, national championship, as well as 2 Heisman Trophy winners and a ton of All-Americans, and right now the longest home winning streak in college football. I'm confident Oklahoma will turn it around. I know this because they're probably going to have the longest week of practice. I would not want to be an Oklahoma player during practices and film watching this week. But I wanted to get all that off my chest because you're going to know how I feel, and I'm going to tell you why, and I'm going to have the facts and my reasons for backing it up, okay? This is not one of those things where I try to make this a gripe fest, okay? But it's also one of those things where I'm not going to kiss somebody's tail either. I say what's on my mind by viewing the game, and then you know how I feel, okay? And a lot of Sooner fans feel that way, and again, this video is not going to be for everybody. But if you want me to be fair, if you want to know what's on my mind, then this video, not to toot my own horn, is a must. Okay, now let's talk about Florida State Seminoles, of course. New head coach Jimbo Fisher, an assistant under legendary dadgummit coach Bobby Bowden, one of the greatest coaches who ever lived. And of course, Bowden resigned last year under pressure. The program the last few years, despite all the great things that he did at Florida State, they were at a stage to where changes had to be made. So they were made. You also have now a new defensive coordinator. Manders is not there anymore. You have Mark Stoops, which we'll talk about in a second. But Florida State, even though Samford, the team that they played last week, was a pretty bad team, a 1AA team that only won 4 games a year ago, so, and athletically they were outmatched, at least the attitude for Florida State, from what I saw that game on ESPNU last Saturday, I watched a good part of the game until it got disinteresting, was an attitude. Their attitude seemed to be a lot better than last year. Of course, one game, I don't know how much you can read into it, but appeared to be pretty pumped up. Maybe it was because it was a season opener, but you have a feeling that Florida State is going to be back, okay? It's pretty difficult to recruit in the state of Florida because you have Miami, you have Florida, you have Georgia in that area trying to get the best high school players in the country. But Florida State's one of those squads like Oklahoma, you know, it's like Alabama, it's like Texas. Hey, at one point, those squads weren't in the top 10 all the time. Florida State has enough of a loyal following, enough money, enough boosters, enough tradition to where being mediocre for a long period of time just isn't going to happen. Florida State, I think eventually is going to be on top of the ACC. I don't know if it'll be this year, but I think that they will. And I think it's because of the new coaches and attitude. And believe me, I'm not dogging Bobby Bowden at all. He did great things at Florida State, but it was time for a change in my opinion. Christian Ponder, this guy's going to be playing on Sundays in the NFL. Terrific quarterback, threw for a ton of yardage last year, missed the last 3 games due to injury, but still had fantastic stats. Last week looked sharp. Granted, it was against Samford, but it was still a nice performance, distributing the ball evenly to their receivers, and running game did okay as well. Florida State, believe me, if you thought DeAndre Burrell from Utah State had a nice game, and he did, he threw for over 300 yards, I promise you this, Florida State has wide open guys. Unlike Burrell, Ponder's not going to miss them. So the secondary for Oklahoma, all eyes are going to be on them. We'll talk about that later. Defensively, this is the area, this is why Florida State kind of dropped off a little bit. Not that they were a terrible team, but they weren't the Florida State of old, and the secondary was the reason why. Big reason why was because under the old system, that coverage of man-to-man, bumping, all that stuff, they were getting killed by it, okay? Especially if teams ran slant patterns. Now, with Mark Stoops, yes, the brother of Bob Stoops, think he knows a little bit about Oklahoma? Oh, yeah. Going to see more zone coverage, okay? Doesn't mean they won't be aggressive, but you're not going to see the same coverage as you saw a year ago. I don't know how much better Florida State's defense is this year than last year. I guess we'll find out this week. Samford was not a test, so it is yet to be seen if they are better. Last year, Florida State was one of the worst defenses in the country, giving up over 30 yards a game. I'm sorry, not 30 yards, but 30 points a game. And they were outside the top 100 in pass defense. Naturally, things had to change. Florida State with experience on defense, I think they returned about half their starters. The secondary will be a huge focus, just like Oklahoma's in this upcoming game. There is no question, ladies and gentlemen, Florida State is going to be a tough game for Oklahoma. Will Oklahoma be ready to play? I have no doubt about it. I think they'll make adjustments. Bob Stoops and his coaching staff, one of the best staffs in the country. You're going to see changes this week, okay? I'm not saying personnel-wise, but I am saying that you will see some changes, probably more tactical changes, and definitely they're going to be focused. Should be one heck of a game from Norman. By the way, great news for Oklahoma. Frank Alexander, the number 2 defensive end on the team, missed last week due to an injury. He's back. Moses Madu at running back. He returns after serving that 1-game suspension for the DUI just a couple of months ago. Now let's talk about the 4 keys to this game. And key number 1, if Oklahoma does not do this, I don't care what my last 3 keys are, Oklahoma will lose this game. Contain Christian Ponder. Does that mean that they're going to be able to stop Ponder? No. Ponder's going to have his moments, but you at least need to put heat on him. Alexander, Beal, this is your time to shine. You got that solid defensive end rotation back. You're going to have about 5 DEs that you're going to be able to rotate. Get to Ponder. Defense, take chances. Don't just let Ponder get comfortable in the pocket. Don't let him run the show. You know, he's going to have his moments, but Oklahoma, make sure you have your moments as well. If so, you're going to be fine and have a shot at winning this game. But contain Christian Ponder. Solid arm. He's a veteran. He's dangerous. Don't let him run the show. Otherwise, my last 3 keys won't matter. Key number 2, time for Landry to bounce back. Landry Jones did throw for a couple of touchdowns last week. Had 1 call back because of an illegal shift penalty, but threw 2 interceptions with Oklahoma knocking on the door. Held the ball too long in the pocket. That has to change. We'll see if Jones is more comfortable. I didn't think the offensive line, by the way, did that bad of a job last week, so a lot of that was on Landry Jones. Time for him to bounce back. Time for him to look like that quarterback that we saw against Stanford in the Sun Bowl last December. Key number 3, DeMarco, do it again. Talking about DeMarco Murray, had over 200 yards rushing last week. Fantastic game. Until he lost a little weight during the offseason. That probably helped him run a little faster. I don't know if it's DeMarco Murray of his freshman year, but it was a pretty solid DeMarco Murray. Hadn't seen him look that good in a while. Again, over 200 yards rushing. Do the job, please, DeMarco. You're going to get chances. And then number 4, make it a special game. We're talking about special teams. Last week, Oklahoma made their only field goal attempt. It wasn't a pretty kick by O'Hara, but it split the uprights. Biggest concern in this game is going to be the punt return game. Florida State excels at this. Greg Reid last year led Florida State in punt return average, 16 yards a punt. He's dangerous. He can play. Even if he doesn't score touchdowns, which he did last week against Stanford, coincidentally, he can give Florida State great field position. So, Tressway, one of the best punters in the country. Angle punting is going to be so important. Hang time. And this is an area where Oklahoma could really be good in. Hang time. Make those punts as high as possible to give the punt team an opportunity to cover the lanes and to cover the dangerous Greg Reid. He can turn the game just like that. Don't let Greg Reid have a big day special teams-wise. He's very, very good. That punt return average from last year of 16 yards indicates that. Final thoughts on this game. This is going to be fantastic for college football fans to watch. For Oklahoma, for Florida State, in general, it's going to be a lot of fun. There's going to be a lot of points in this game. There's going to be momentum shifts. Florida State is going to come in with the frame of mind that they can end the home winning streak. 8.5 points is too many. I think Florida State covers, but I think Oklahoma will prove that last week, lessons to be learned. And I think even though Florida State's going to have moments, I think Oklahoma, in the end, playing at home, will get the job done. If this game were in Tallahassee, I would say Florida State wins. But in this case, 35-34, razor-thin margin, Oklahoma bounces back from a lethargic performance last week, gets the job done thanks to a solid week of practice and thanks to some adjusting. 35-34, Oklahoma to keep the winning streak alive and to extend it to 32 games. My post-game show will be on the air sometime Saturday evening. Oklahoma to win, but it won't be easy, and you might want to have some Alka-Seltzer on hand. You might need it because it's going to be a little gut-wrenching.